Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I remember mostly in high school I had the paper route for part of the time, at least the first couple of years, and then I worked for the Murrays and the Crumpackers, and even Orville Garber in the orchards in the summertime, and also into the fall, and in picking apples.
Did you do that several different seasons, or just?
I did that several different summers. I would guess probably I did that for at least 4 summers. And one of the summers, that would have been probably 1945. I worked for the Crumpacker brothers, John and Emery Crumpacker, and worked with German war prisoners. During that period of time, they shipped a lot of German war prisoners over from Germany, and who were captured in Europe, and they shipped them to the U.S. because it was free labor, and they stayed in CCC camps, the civilian conservation corps camps, which people lived in during the Roosevelt days. And at the end, this was near the end of Roosevelt's term, of course, but they lived there, and then they picked apples and worked, till apples were all done. And I learned to know some of those guys really pretty well, and they talked about their families and about their struggles with not really wanting to be in the war. And I think, I was a kid, but I think they were fairly honest in terms of saying that of course they didn't want to be here, and they didn't want to be prisoners, but they were glad to be outside and to be doing something. And I don't know who got the money that was paid to them. I guess maybe part of it went for their keep. I don't know about that, but one of the guys I know was named Adolf, which is a really interesting name. But I learned to talk with him. He knew some English, and I would talk with him some, and learned more about him than I did most of the other guys. But then during that time, it was not with them, but it was later on, well, it was earlier, that I worked for Max Murray, and he let me drive one of his trucks to go down to the mountain area in near Bedford, Virginia, and pick up workers in the packing house, and I would leave home about 5 o'clock in the morning and go down to the mountains and drive through the mountain roads and pick up people along the way to have them at the packing house by 7 o'clock in the morning. And then I worked in the packing house too, when I was doing that part of the job, and I helped to pack apples. And
you like driving that truck?
Like driving a truck, yeah. And we worked a 10-hour day, and it was like during part of that time I got 12.5 cents an hour, $1.25 a day.
How long did the prisoner thing go on? Is that just a season or two?
It was a couple of years. Years because they had shipped them here, and they stayed here till after the war was over, after the armistice was signed, and of course that was after they began to think about sending them back after the war was over in Europe, because it was over in Europe before it was in the Pacific. And so I would guess it was a couple of years that they worked there. It was very beneficial for the fruit people, because they got really cheap labor that way. But they had trouble getting enough labor because a lot of guys were in the military, and but it worked out pretty well. I mean, there weren't any problems with like people escaping or anything like that, and they had food and lodging, and it was better than being behind bars. But it wasn't easy living particularly. And then then of course worked. You know, of course you picked apples until late in the fall. I mean, way after school started, and I worked some weekends and helping to pick apples, but of course I was in school otherwise. And then I kept the paper out during the winter for a couple of those high school summers, and then I eventually gave that up when I had more full-time work, because I couldn't get all of that done. And I think my senior year, maybe junior and senior years, I didn't have the paper out any longer.
Yeah, looking at your yearbook, looks like you were really busy with
Yeah, I was
extracurricular
doing a lot of
activities and
things,
sports and that kind of thing.
And I enjoyed high school especially, and especially I enjoyed playing baseball and some basketball too, but I wasn't really very good at basketball. And I had a good experience in high school, and had pretty good teachers for that time, but they weren't nearly as skilled and educated as teachers are now, and they didn't have to have the level of education. And it was harder to get enough teachers, partly again because many people were in the military, and then some, when the war was over, then some came back, and like my civics and government teacher, he had been in the military and then was a teacher when he came back. And then I graduated from high school in 1947, and also at that time I was licensed to the ministry at the Cloverdale Church, and my cousin James Floor was licensed at the same time that I was. We both in the same service at the church, and we were just about exactly the same age, and we're in the same class. And then let's see. Well, during that year, I guess it was during his senior year or right after his senior year in high school, he became ill, so he had to stay out of school for a year. And so then he got behind in school, and I was a year ahead of him then. And he was, and then he went to Bridgewater also, but he was a year behind me. And then one of the interesting things was that after I graduated from college, I of course went to Bethany the next year, and James was a year behind me in college, so he was a senior that year. But then that first year in seminary was when my dad died in January of 1952, and James' father died that same year. And one of the interesting things was that we both, of course, were in the same church, and James then dropped out of school and stayed home with his mother, and I didn't. I came back from seminary and stayed with my mother a few weeks to kind of help get things organized and support her, and then went back to seminary to finish the schooling. And the seminary president had encouraged me to do that. In fact, the first year, I mean, when he learned by my dad's death, he came in from his home, which was in Oak Park, Illinois, and came by and talked with Shirley and said, I want to see David when he comes back from Sears.
That's right, you were married by now.
Yeah, we were married then, and I was working down at Sears at that time. And when I came back from Sears, I went into his office to see him, and he said, David, I know this is not easy, but I want you to go home and take care of your mother and do what you need to do and get back here and finish your seminary. And he was not a non-directive counselor. Rufus Bowman was really a great guy, and he had really encouraged me because during my high school years, he was in Roanoke, Virginia one time and called me up and said he wanted to have lunch with me. And that was I think that was one of the strongest encouragements for me to consider going into the ministry at that time, because the president of the seminary, took time to come and talk with me. And I thought then that if I did go into ministry, I would like to be an evangelist, which was really a very interesting thing in itself. And he said, "Well, David, okay," he said, "you may want to do that, but what I think is best for you to do is to go to seminary and learn about being a pastor and become a pastor for a while, and then decide whether you want to be an evangelist or not." And again, it was probably very direct advice, but it was all right. But that I got pretty far ahead of things there because I think my high school, as I say, my high school was a good experience. But, I lived pretty far from school, and I missed being involved in some things at school because I was too far away. And I also did, had chores to do when I got home because my dad worked a long day in Roanoke. He worked in Roanoke, Virginia, and in the city. And of course, I came home and did chores at the house during that time. And a part of what I did, besides working on the orchards, we had raised some chickens, and we raised a lot of things in the garden, and we would rent a space in the market in Roanoke, Virginia, and I was the one that worked that space on Saturdays. And sold chickens and sold vegetables and eggs, of course. And I can't remember what else, but whatever else we had. Well, I remember selling asparagus. I remember that.
So you took a truck of goods on
We
Saturdays.
took a lot of that, and a lot of things in the car. And I was, my dad and mother were not there. I mean, they didn't do that. I did all the selling. And so it was really an interesting thing that I learned to do and learned what it was to do marketing at that time. And I did that for several summers, but it was just on a Saturday, so I didn't work. Usually, I guess I didn't work at the orchards on Saturdays, and I can't remember how long a period of time I did that. But a part of that, of course, getting ready for that was helping to kill the chickens and dress and clean the chickens, which I hated that, and I'm sure that has contributed to my dislike of chickens. And that because a part of the chicken business was that I had to also work and take care of the chickens and clean the chicken houses and that kind of thing.
They usually didn't smell
Collect the
very good.
eggs.
I can remember that as a kid.
And one incident about the eggs, we had a lot of chickens and raised. And of course, produced a lot of eggs, and sold them. We sold a number, to a number of people, a pretty significant number of eggs. I don't remember exactly how many, but I remember one Saturday we had all the eggs in a crate and on the back seat of the car, and we're going to Roanoke to be in the market to sell the eggs. And we were going through Bonsack, the little town that's near just close to where we lived. And this girl, I was driving, this girl ran right out in front of us in Bonsack, and I slammed on the brakes. And of course missed her. But all of the eggs flipped over, and it just they broke in the back seat on the floor. It was just a horrible mess. So we had to go back home and clean all that stuff up.
At least you didn't hit that poor girl.
Did not hit the poor girl. And I don't think she even knew the
That she had
terrible
caused
predicament
that,
that we had with that. But it's one thing I remember about that. And of course, as I think I said before, that I did milk the cow, and we didn't have enough milk or anything like that to sell. It was just for our own consumption. But my mother usually made butter, churned and made butter. And we had that. I think she maybe sold some of the butter because we didn't eat that much butter. I really looked forward then to finishing high school and going to college. But I continued to play baseball in the summer, and we had on some teams, and we had pick-up teams, and played all summer and picked up guys from. And as we got older, then there were guys came from more distance around, and we had better teams. And
What position did you play?
well, I played outfield a lot, but actually in some of the early years when we played in the cow pasture, I played shortstop because nobody else wanted to play shortstop. And even though I was left-handed, which you never have a left-handed shortstop, I played shortstop because nobody else wanted to play, and I really wanted to play ball, so I played shortstop. And that was, and that's one of the key memories I have about that.
I don't think I've ever heard the story of when you first met Shirley.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Are we-
let's see, when we,
Would have been after
We in
high
that
school,
time
that was
frame?
in
after high
college.
school,
Yeah.
and yeah, when I first went to college, I was dating a girl by the name of Barbara Rader, and that was kind of going to the end, I think, during that time. And then when I got to college, I don't think I dated anybody for a good while, and then. Shirley, how did we first meet? I can't remember exactly.
You know, I don't really remember.
We know it
Kind of saw
happened.
each other around at college or something?
Yeah, we saw each other around college, and I don't remember how.
I
I
don't
really
remember our
can't
first
remember.
date, but what our first date was.
Mhm. I don't remember. I can't remember what our first date was either.
That's why I've never heard this story.
That's right.
That's probably
So
why.
who were your friends at college
Mhm.
when you first got there? Do you remember who your friends were there?
Well, yeah, one of my early friends was Earl Fike.
What about you?
Well, I didn't know anybody when I went.
Hmm.
So, but then after a month or so, was there anybody you were?
Well,
Becoming friends
there
with the girls
was
you roomed with.
3 of us in a room.
Who were
Hmm.
who were they?
Well, one was called Betty Miller, and then Catherine Kaufman, and I been just assigned her to somebody, and we
Yeah.
freshman year. That's where the 3 of us.
So they wouldn't have had helped you meet Dad, or that wasn't any
No.
connection
No,
there.
I didn't have any connection with them at all. But I think it might have been, you know, like it's possible that we sat at a table in the dining room together and maybe started talking or
Mhm.
something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I remember, knowing what you were on the 3rd floor, weren't you? Or
Yes.
second or third floor. Because I remember calling up to you, when I was over there, and then she would come down to meet me.
Well, they had a coffee shop there, and we would go for coffee sometimes and talk.
But you weren't in any classes together.
No?
No, I don't think we had any classes together.
No.
But then, was it the first or second year? I took some voice lessons, and we were at least talking with each other then because she played.
I played
She
for her,
accompanied me
but-
when I practiced.
When I practiced.
And we'd go to the practice room, and she practiced with me. And I remember one of the songs was Roses Are Blooming in Picardy.
Oh, yeah.
And but we started dating the first year, didn't we?
Yeah, I think, end of the first year.
Yeah.
And on Sundays, they would give you a bag lunch for supper. They didn't cook or anything, so we'd have this bag
Mhm.
lunch, and then we would go hiking or walking or go across the swinging bridge.
Yeah.
And with friends, with Peggy and Ivan Mason, remember we'd go with them.
And Earl and Jean's.
Yeah.
And
So,
some of my other friends, one was a guy named Leon Klein. He was. I didn't start out rooming with him. I started out rooming with a guy by the name of Vivian Skaggs, who was in my high school class.
Mm.
But he was a veteran. He had been in the military and came back, and then he finished high school.
His name was Vivian?
Vivian, yes, yeah, and that's really an interesting thing because
Boy named Sue.
some of the people at college at the beginning thought that he was a girl and that he was in
You're
the wrong
rooming him
place.
with
Yeah, right, he was in the wrong place.
Well, there was a Vivian around here.
Oh, is
Viv-
that right?
Viv, yeah.
Oh, Viv.
Viv Simmons.
Viv Simmons.
I never
Yeah.
thought of him
Isn't
as a
that
Vivian.
Vivian?
And that's something, yeah, it's Vivian.
went by
Simmons.
Viv.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And,
So
but then we roomed together only part of a year because he was older and I was younger and, more interested in doing silly stuff. And so then I I think the half of the next half of that year, was that when I roomed with Leon Klein? Then my sophomore year, I roomed with Leon Klein, who was another guy that was a young guy. He was from Manassas, Virginia, and we roomed that year. And then the third year, he went to Virginia Tech because he was going into engineering, some kind of engineering and farming, and so we stayed friends in a way, but we didn't see each other very often. We communicated not very often.
Well, you two got married after your sophomore year, right?
No, junior year.
After your junior year.
My senior year we were married, yeah.
But you were only about 20, weren't you?
Yeah. My third year, then I roomed with Harold Hirsch, who was became a really good friend of mine, and he was a debate partner because he and I were on the debate team, and then he was best man at our wedding. And as I say, we roomed together that third year, and Mom Shirley wasn't there the third year at all. She went home and was home my third year in college.
How come you were home?
My mother wanted me to be
Her
home.
mother wanted her to be home, and that was a big mistake that we made. We should have, because her folks weren't going to pay for her education after that sophomore year, and we should have just borrowed the money, and for her to finish, to go.
Would she just wanted you home because she missed you and she wanted female
We were
companionship?
engaged, and
Yeah, she was dominant. Her mother really was pretty domineering.
But you were engaged by then?
Yeah, we got engaged. We got engaged the beginning. Well, it was that summer, I guess, when
yeah.
Well, because
So you fulfilled your purpose for going to school. You got engaged.
That's right. That's really part of it. Really, was what their folks felt, wasn't it, Shirley?
Yeah.
And but her mother really wanted her to be home, and she was pretty controlling during that period of time. And then I roomed with Harold, and we. I'm trying to think because, we had the engagement ring. You had that fixed with the jeweler in Patchogue, didn't you? With your opals and diamond, and then we actually you came down to my house, and was that Christmas of our sophomore year?
I remember.
Oh, because don't you remember I remember we sat on the living room couch in the front room, and opened your ring.
At your house?
Yeah. Don't you remember that?
Nope.
Gee, that was really important to you.
Yeah, really.
Burned in my memory.
Because I remember that. I remember because. So where did you think we should that we looked at your ring then?
I don't remember.
That it was there on the couch, and because I remember that we were staying up pretty late, and my folks had gone to bed, but I remember that I think my mother, called down one time wondering if we were still when we were going to bed or something like that. I kind of remember that. But that wasn't a real easy year because I was in Bridgewater all that year, and Grammy was at home, and part of that year she was doing nannying, weren't you? Didn't you do that part of that year?
Yeah, in the summer.
But it was very definitely we didn't seem we had much choice in that third year, and then we weren't assertive enough to say, well, we'd like for Shirley to be sure she gets her degree. But then when we got married that summer in 1950, and then that summer we worked at Ocean Grove. Our first summer of being married, we worked at Ocean Grove and at the Lapierre Hotel.
Was that fun?
That was fun.
That
Yeah.
sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it
At
was
Ocean
really,
Grove, even
And
though
you
you
see,
had
there
to
were
work.
3 couples of us, Earl and Jean Fike, and Earl and Jean had gotten married the year before. They got married after the sophomore year. And then Bob and Connie, Bob Ziegler and Connie, were another couple, and then us. And Bob had known these people in Pennsylvania that had this hotel, and so he and Earl and I went up during the winter to meet with them because they'd never had any college students to work for them. And the 3 of us talked with them about we'd like to come and work for them in the summer. And it would be the first experience they had in having college students. And so they hired us. And I remember, that experience was Bob Ziegler dad was pretty rigid person. He something had got wrong with the car, and we had to help pay for fixing it, and we had nothing to do with that. And we didn't have any money. I remember Earl and I struggling with that. And but anyway, so then we met them, and then they hired us, and then of course we had our wives too. And Connie and Jean had some waitress experience, so they hired them as waitresses. And then Earl was going to work in the kitchen, so that's what they needed, somebody to assist the cook. And then I was going to work in the dining room as a waiter, and then Bob Ziegler was going to be a waiter also.
And what was you?
I was working in the kitchen with the
Salads.
salads.
Yeah. And she had a neat job, and she helped to
Desserts.
prepare the salads and desserts all the time. And one of the women that was at one of the tables that I had, people usually came there for a long period, for like a week, a minimum of a week, maybe 2 weeks that they came there on vacation. And so they had the same table all the time, and you had the same, you waited on them the whole time. And one of the people there that learned that Mom was my wife and that she was working in the salads, and so every week she gave a tip to me for me to give to Mom. But the waiting the tables, I mean, I really enjoyed that. But the problem was we had to pool our tips, and we had a couple of people that were not very good, and so that really cut down on tips, and they shared the same tips that everybody else did. And but it was fun. We didn't make a lot of money, but we got what did we get? $2 I think I got $2 an hour, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
And then we got tips, and we pooled the tips and had to split those. And but
we
had
had a good part of the afternoon off.
So that would be fun if the weather was nice. You go to the beach,
or we'd walk on the boardwalk, or do stuff like that. So.
Well, we rented a little. It was a little place down there where you could change your clothes, wasn't it, Shirley?
I don't remember renting any place to change.
Well,
clothes.
some place that you could change your clothes down on the beach or near the beach, or go to the beach.
One of those little wooden structures that you just go in and put your bathing suit on.
And we had, we were all, well, of course, the Zieglers and us were newly married, but then Earl and Jean had been married a whole year. But Earl and Jean, we were all in the, we were in the basement of the hotel, and they'd never had anybody live down there before, and it wasn't really a great situation, but we shared a bathroom, and shared a shower, and shared a bathroom, and there was not really a lot of privacy because the rooms were not, the bedrooms were not too big, but that's all we had was each had a bedroom, and then the walls were not, didn't go all the way to the ceiling.
Grief.
They didn't. About this much space, you know, and the Fikes were next to us, and then the Zieglers were on the other side of us, and we would, Earl was, I remember sometimes he'd say, well, when you get through with the magazine, throw it over because I want to see it. But then there were a couple times, like I remember this, us and the Fikes especially, I would say something to Shirley about, well, what do you think? Well, would you like to go to a movie tonight? And Earl said, we'd like to go too. So it was stuff like that, you know.
Not private at all.
Not private at all. And one time we were down there, we were all in bed, and we heard this scream from Connie Ziegler, and she was in the bathroom, and this rat ran across on the floor.
This was really basement.
It sounds
It was
like
basement.
it.
It was a basement,
Yeah.
it really was, but
Ugh.
it's still, you know, it was fun. And Earl and I worked on our cars. Both of us worked on our cars on the weekends especially. And that's where I put backup lights on my car and put turn signals on the car because they didn't have turn signals then. And we did both of that out on the street. And then we were Ocean Grove, New Jersey, and every weekends. I mean, there was run by the Methodists, United Methodists at that time, and you couldn't leave your car in there on Saturday night. You couldn't be on Sunday. Could not have any traffic and you couldn't leave your car parked on the street. So we had every Saturday night we had to take our car out and put it over in Asbury Park, park it on the street over there, and leave it there all day Sunday. And then midnight on Sunday, if we stayed up that late, we could go and get our car and bring it back and park it near the hotel.
Was it like that later on when we went to Ocean
It was
Grove?
one.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
when we
you did.
went,
Yeah.
For the conference.
Mhm. When you
They
had,
still
Wendy-
Isn't that weird?
When Wendy Guthrie went with us one time, went with you, and let's see, then Jean went with Cindy, Jean True, and yeah, we had to take the car
Yeah.
out on Saturday night, and see, it made it hard because conference ended on Sunday,
Right. I
and you had
remember
to carry
that.
your
Figure it
bags out
Mhm.
because you couldn't drive in to get your bags, you had to carry them all out, and
It was so damp in that basement that I had a few dresses I hung up on hangers. They were rust.
Oh,
Rust-
rust from the hangers.
Oh, that's
from the hangers.
ridiculous.
I-
Wow.
It
I'd
was,
forgotten that.
it was really
That's
very,
sneaky.
almost primitive.
Sneaky.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we say, we didn't have it. We didn't have to pay for any food. We got our food, and so we saved most of what we made, which wasn't a lot. I think you made $25 a week, didn't you?
I think so.
And then you got a dollar or two tip.
If he remembered to give it to you.
No, I gave
I'm
it to
joking.
her. Yeah, but her name was Mrs. Moninger. I remember that. And I had I had one table of 4 people. There were 2 couples that vacationed together, and they were there for 2 weeks, and they were really good tippers. And I really hated to have to, because they tipped really well. But I had to put all that money in
Yep.
the
Yep.
pool.
Yep. Yep.
And we had this one guy, his name was Joe, who went to King's College, which is a fundamentalist school in New York. And he was just, he would sit down at the table with the people that he was waiting on and really talk with them about religion, trying to
Ooh-wee.
convert
I'm
them.
surprised he got away with
And
that.
he would bring when he brought the food out, he would also bring the dessert out at the same time as
Ice
the main
cream and
course.
sit there and
And
let
like
it
ice
melt.
cream would sit there and melt. And of course, he didn't get good tips. And we really complained about that, and I think they talked with him, but I don't know how much good it did. But anyway, it was still a very interesting summer. And
Well, I guess a number of college students went after we did.
yeah, we were the
experience
pioneers.
never-
They
worked out.
fixed up that basement so nice for them. Had a nice dining room area and fixed it. We just couldn't believe it. We went
Yeah,
stopped
that's right,
by
we
one
did
time
go
and they
and
had
visit.
all that basement.
And you're
all
going,
fixed
oh,
up.
why couldn't
You
we
were the
have
guinea
had
pigs.
that?
It was
It
really
would have been heaven.
Yeah. Because you see, we went back after we had our trip, had you all, and we got to go down there and see what it was like, and it was crazy. But they had, they had a number of years after we were there.
Yeah.
They had students that came and worked for them, and from Bridgewater, and we were the first ones. But that was really for the first year of being married. It was really kind of an interesting experience. And then the next summer, I had a summer pastorate, and that was my first year of seminary. No, that was right after college, after I graduated from college.
Where was that summer?
That was over at near Charlottesville, Virginia. It was Free Union was the name of the community. But I had that. Went over there as a pastor of that church my last year, my senior year in college too, and I preached over there every other month. I mean, no, every other week.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go twice a month. And one time I went. There were 5 Sundays, and I didn't count very well, and I went on a Sunday that wasn't supposed. They weren't planning on my being there. It was kind of funny because I walked in and they were all surprised because they had Sunday school every week, and they said, "Well, you know, it's okay. Just go ahead and preach anyway."
You were ready, might as well.
Yeah, and I think they paid me too, so I can't.
That's pretty good.
Sure. But that was that was when we had that summer. Then that's when we had Leroy, our little puppy dog. That we had. You know, we've shown you pictures of Leroy, and that was. Let's see. One time you saw a snake down when you went down to the
There's
outhouse.
4 rooms and a long path.
Yeah. And one snake. Yeah. But that was one of the fun experiences we had with that. Was that I went pastoral visiting on this family one afternoon, and when I left, they gave me this live chicken, and to take back home, and I had it in the. We probably told you this story, I think. But anyway, I had it in a box in the trunk of the car, and when I got home, to our little house, you know, and Mom came to the door, and I had opened the trunk and took the chicken out.
Here.
And she said, "What are we going to do with that?" Because she had never.
And you didn't like chicken anyway.
No, I didn't. And she had never cooked a chicken or, you know, and cut it up. And of course, I had killed chickens and dressed them, you know, but I didn't really want to do that. So we had this really nice neighbor, Mrs. Allen, up the street from where we lived. And we went up and told them we had this live chicken. We didn't know what to do with it. And so they traded us a can of tenderloin for this live chicken.
That sounds like a good deal.
It was a good deal. It really was, yeah. The mom she cooked that really well.
Well, the first year they cleaned out the well, didn't they?
Yeah, I had a dug well. And it was just about 30 feet deep.
Pretty disgusting at first, huh?
Well, it was, you know, we couldn't use it because we weren't sure whether it was clean. But then they got that cleaned out, and we were there, you know, the second summer too. And then they cleaned it and had it inspected, and so we drank the water out of the well the second summer.
But that first one, we had to go down to Mrs. Allen's for all our water.
Oh my God!
Water and carry water.
And they had a well, but it was sort of enclosed next to their kitchen.
Oh.
You saw some of those probably around here, but the well was, you know, it was like Shirley said, it was enclosed in the kitchen and
yeah,
porch
my grandmother had a pitcher pump right in her back room.
That was kind of like what they had. Well,
But these were buckets. I mean,
oh really?
no,
Did you
yeah,
have
the bucket. I mean, a well.
Not a
yeah,
pitcher
you had to
pump.
pull it out
Jeez.
like that.
Not a
yeah.
pump. It was,
Yeah.
Wow. Open well.
I had my first wedding then at that church, and in Virginia, to be able to perform a wedding ceremony, you had to have a property bond. Like you had to own some property, and then you had to sign a bond. Well, of course, I didn't own any property. We didn't own any property, but there was a guy there, Mr. Maupin, that was willing, his own property, and he was willing to go my bond, and so he signed the bond, and then I had that wedding.
we were invited for meals. I mean, on Sundays and everything when we were there. And there would be so many there that they would eat in sections. Maybe I don't know whether your family ever did it.
At church or?
No, this was in their home.
We go home after church. We go
Home after church, and then you'd have one sitting. I don't know whether the kids ate first or last. I think they ate last.
You ate in droves then,
Yeah.
kind of, in sections.
We always ate all at once, but we might be split up into different.
No,
Yeah.
They didn't have room for that, I
They
guess,
didn't have
huh?
room for that.
Wow.
But I remember, I think I've told you this at one time. I looked back in the kitchen area, and they had this cake there, and it was covered with flies.
Oh.
I mean, the whole cake looked like,
Yeah.
I thought,
You know those
we're
flies have
eating
been
that
in the
for
outhouse.
dessert. I
They've
mean, the
been-
flies were just
Yeah.
terrible.
And I usually made out pretty well because they had so much food. They would
Oh, yeah.
they would often have ham and chicken both, or
Mhm.
beef and chicken, you know, and then so you know, I could just say, well, I'll just have some beef today or something like that. And usually every Sunday afternoon, and sometimes I guess maybe on Saturday too, we'd have the community. I mean, there's this, you know, people would come from all over the community to be together, and we'd play ball, have a ball game, and chews up sides and stuff like that, and pasture people. So. But that was a really good. We had a rich experience with that, and learning to.
That was a summer pastor.
Yeah, a summer pastor, and did 2 different summers, and I almost, after that first summer, I almost applied to go to school at University of Virginia instead of going back to seminary. Instead of going to seminary, but I finally decided I'd go on to seminary instead. Because we really were kind of settling in, was just having a good experience there, and I thought, well,
You like
the university
area.
was so close right there, you know, but we went on to seminary. It was the right decision.
So follow on with that timeline as far as your seminary experience, and then on to your first church. What?
Yeah, after what we did, then we went to seminary. Of course, that January of my first year, my dad died, and then that summer, Shirley, we knew she was pregnant with Cindy, and we stayed. Well, of course, that summer we went. We had the summer pastor at Free Union. That was the second summer that we were. After first year seminary, we went back to Free Union for another summer, and then and you were supposed to do some summer pastorate or something for a couple summers, and so I got that all taken care of. Then went back that fall, and then there was an opportunity. Well, it was actually during that first year when there was an opportunity again. It was the first time that. There were some churches in the area that were interested in having seminary students to come and be assistants or work in their churches, and so there were 2 or 3 of us that were kind of interested, but the seminary had approved us to go and talk with these churches, and I went to the Austin Methodist Church to try to talk with them and talk with their board of stewards and talk with the pastor and. Then they hired me.
Where was that church?
It was actually on the edge of Chicago, just inside the Chicago city lines, and then Oak Brook was next to that, which was a city also in its own right, but it was kind of more of a township city.
So was Cindy born there, or was she born before that while you were in seminary?
No, she was born while she was born while I was in seminary, but it was after. Well, I'll go ahead and tell that story. Then so I was ready to start work out there, and that was in April of the end of my first year, and Mom was pregnant, and that Saturday, Mom was started having pains, and. So Bethany Hospital was right across the street. So we walked across the street, and it was about 8 o'clock in the evening, and walked across the street over there, and they said, well, she's going to have this baby tonight. And so I was there with her, and I got to be with her for a while. Of course, you couldn't be in the delivery room.
In those days, they put you out anyway, didn't they?
And the doctor that we had, that was our doctor, was Dr. Curtis Bowman. But he said he didn't come out at night to deliver babies.
Oh.
His partner, William, Dr. Wien, Bill Wien, came out to do the night deliveries, and so he was there at midnight, and Cindy was born 4 minutes after midnight on April 26th.
Very early morning.
Very early morning. And we were supposed to go, it was supposed to be my first day of work at the Austin church. And we were supposed to have lunch with these people by the name of Petersons, and so I went to work.
You didn't realize you were that close, or you just didn't know you were that close to having a baby?
Your due date, was it? Did you know that it was coming right then?
Well, she knew it was close, but she didn't know how close. We didn't.
You went ahead and made
we
plans.
had those plans because we just thought, well, I would go ahead and we'd go ahead and out there. Of course, we didn't know whether that it was going to really be as close as it was. But then, of course, she stayed there, and I went on and went out to Austin Church and was there for the first day. And I don't think I stayed there for lunch. I think I came back to be with Mom then after I I was there for the worship service.
See, back
Were you
then
still in the hospital
they
then?
keep you in the hospital.
Stayed
Oh
in the
yeah,
hospital.
yeah, she was there.
A couple
We
of
stayed in the
days.
hospital several days.
That's
Several
right.
days.
Mhm.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get up, don't move.
Yeah, and
Well, he worked at Sears that first year some time.
yeah, I was he had a question.
Yes.
It's on again.
On again. Let's see. That was our.
You were in seminary.
Yeah, we were in seminary, and well, we had it was a good summer, but we came back to Virginia. We took a break right after school was out, and we came back to Virginia, to visit with my mother. And well, actually, David Shirley's mother came out and was with her for a while after Cindy was born.
Yeah, she came out.
I don't know how long was that, a week or 10 days or something like that, or longer than that. I couldn't remember for sure.
And we were living on the second floor, and I had to go up because the bathroom was up the
Yeah.
next floor.
What?
We didn't have a bathroom.
Hey.
It was almost like a dorm, kind of like
Yeah.
a dorm.
Yeah,
so
I had
it
to go up
was,
to the next floor for the.
it was Mac Hall.
And where did Grammy stay then?
Well, they had some guests.
Yeah, they had a
rooms.
guest floor that.
So she wasn't right there.
Yeah,
She just
No,
came.
there wasn't
every day.
room. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
we didn't have. Yeah,
That's
we
why I
didn't
wondered,
have
where
much
did
room.
she sleep? Where?
See, yeah,
there wasn't
that's.
any room.
And yeah, we must have moved over there because we never did have Cindy. Cindy didn't live in the there when we shared that apartment.
No.
She didn't live there at all. But
So
anyway,
that was before
so we were
Cindy.
you were in Mac Hall, after Cindy was born, and then the situation Grammy and Shirley talked about, and yeah, that was an uncomfortable thing.
We were in 3 different settings living.
Yeah, but then that.
You must not have had much stuff to move. You didn't have anything.
But we didn't
A
have
few
any furniture.
clothes.
We didn't have any furniture.
Yeah,
We
no
didn't have any
furniture, a few
furniture
clothes.
No. No, we didn't have any TV. We got a TV while we were there. It was a used one that there was a guy at seminary that was in the repair business, and he had access to used TVs and sold a lot of them to us.
Well, he's told you about borrowing this money from the secretary to buy
Well, yeah, there was Miss
Steinogle.
Edna Steinogle was the she was kind of the secretary and administrative assistant of the church there,
where
but
he
she was
worked.
kind of like a deaconess, I think. I mean, she wasn't married, but anyway, when we finished seminary, of course, we didn't have any furniture or anything
Didn't
like
have any.
that, and so we were going to have to borrow some money, and that's when we started looking around for used furniture and looking in the
Who told you
newspaper
this?
and this kind of
Probably,
thing.
but it's been a long. I don't remember.
And I don't think we've ever told them all this. But anyway, we were looking for, furniture, period. And we saw in the newspaper this dining room set that was advertised for, we weren't sure how much it was, but it had 10 pieces. It had a table and 6 chairs and a little server and a buffet. Would that be 10?
It's 9.
9. Well, it was something else that made it 10. Anyway, I can't
Anyway,
remember.
it was a big set.
It was a big set, yeah. And so I think Dale went with me, and we went out, drove out to this place to look at it, and talked to this lady, and she said, "Well, we want $100 for it." And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "We just don't. We don't have that money, not much money, and could have just buy the table and chairs." And I said, I don't know whether I offered her this or whether we knew that would be $35. And finally, she said, "Well, we'll just sell you the whole thing for $35."
Oh, cool.
It was cool. It was veneer. It was a veneer set, but it was really nice. I don't know.
It
Do you
was nice.
remember? And that server, we kept that in Roanoke. We still had that in Roanoke, and had that for a number of years.
What's a server?
Well, it's a smaller thing like a buffet, but it had.
But
Oh.
really smaller.
Yeah,
Probably in some of the pictures.
yeah, I probably think it probably is.
Yeah.
And but along with that was a stroller that she said, "Well, we'll throw it." We had
You'd see it like in the museum today, that kind of a
yeah,
Oh.
But Cindy,
Oh.
Cindy's in pictures in
yeah,
that
yeah.
stroller.
She's in that stroller. Yeah, it was a blue
Stroller.
stroller, and so she was in that, and we also we bought the whole thing, and we put it. We had to bring it down to the seminary to store it because we were kind of getting our stuff together. Then we also, then I talked with Miss Steinogle, and she had some money, and she offered, I think, to lend us some money, so we borrowed $500 from her. And I know Mom was really kind of worried about that because she didn't want us to borrow any money.
High
That's
finance.
the way I am. See,
Yeah.
that's the way I am.
But my goodness, we didn't have anything. We had to, we had to borrow the money, and so that was we had a.
But how are you gonna pay it back and when?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
when else
Yeah,
you take
that's
it
exactly right. And so we had a couch. We had a couch. That was a hideaway couch, wasn't it? I mean, didn't it pull out, Shirley?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, a couch and a chair. I can't remember what all else.
That's
we
the one
had,
with
but-
all the pictures and us three girls sitting on that couch.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And when we bought it, we spent all that $500. I remember that. And then we shared a moving van with people by the name of Carl Ziegler. Carl, and what was her name? Madeline Ziegler. Because they were going to the Noakesville Church, which was up the road about 40 miles from where we were. And so we shared that moving van and had our furniture and we had, well, I guess the church we ended up was going to pay. They were going to pay for the moving, but right then we were trying to get the best deal we could. You know.
How long did it take you to pay back that $500?
I think I think we paid it back in the first year. I don't think we owed it more than a year. But anyway, we were getting kind of excited. Anyway, I was really excited about the church because when we began in our senior year, began to think about where we'd like to go. You know, what churches would be available, and we learned about what churches were open and where we might have an interest. And there were some churches, of course, we were interested in going back to Virginia, and there were a couple of churches in Virginia that had a little interest in knowing and learning about me, and but the district executive was kind of a regional executive, and he had the idea that you should start with a small church in the country and then move up, you know, and expand. Well, somehow or other, I learned about the Oakton Church. And I don't know, somebody suggested that that might be a good church for us, you know. And it was really it was a really nice sized church. It was a really nice church. And this guy didn't think that I should go there because he thought I should start small.
Too soon.
Yeah. But anyway, they decided they were going to invite me to come, and so I can remember I was really excited about that because I went in the spring of April the 4th. Of my senior year and went on the train to Washington, D.C., and because I could get the train there, and then the chairman of the board met me at the station and went out to Oakton, which was, you know, just outside of Washington, the suburban area. And then I talked with them, and then that Sunday morning I preached and met with the board and talked with them, and they invited me to come. And then we went.
And that was your first real big
That was
step
the
in
first
your career.
pastor. It was really
Great
so there was
parsonage
it
house.
was a
That was a
wonderful.
very cool house.
It was a wonderful church, and it was a rural church that was changing over to a suburban church, and it wasn't easy. It was really hard, but and I remember working pretty hard, but it was really a great church, and that church didn't. There was a kind of an area of churches there, but they didn't have anything like things that they worked on together, and there was no like athletic teams or anything together. And we started a softball league, and it was really a pretty strong league. You know, we had some really good players, and some of the other churches did too. But and so that was really an important part. And several guys came to the church because we had a softball team, and then they stayed and became a part of it. But I had a lot of young people, young couples that were in the church, and several people that I had known at Bridgewater that came there as teachers and this kind of thing, and were in the church.
So how long were you at that church?
6.5 years. And went there in the fall of 1954, and then went to Roanoke Central Church in 1961. January of 1961.
What was your salary?
Started off with $3,000.
Big money.
That's
We
right.
had the parsonage.
Had a parsonage, and $3,000, but that was more than they were paying the pastor who was there before me. They were paying him $28,000. $3,000. Isn't that something?
That was enough then.
Yeah. Well, it was.
We made it enough.
We made it enough, yeah. And but you see, you got the parsonage, and
Yeah, that's a big
that's a
expense
big
that
item
you didn't
there.
have to do.
And but I remember, like buying a washer and dryer. I don't think we bought a washer and dryer until you were born.
We had one at seminary.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We had like a speed clean, which was.
I had to go to this building to do the wash.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pain. Little kids.
But we did
We
bought that speed queen, didn't we, Shirley?
What?
We bought that speed queen.
Yes.
Yeah. And we had that there, which was pretty good. And the house, it was a decent house there.
So both Devon and Ginger were born during that period?
Both Devon and Ginger were born in the Arlington Hospital. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Devon was in a hurry to be born. We all know that story. The nurse told me it was a good thing we didn't stop for a Coke. She was born about 20-some minutes after we got to the hospital.
We're messing around.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I came home and Shirley was just kind of lackadaisically getting ready and saying, well, we may need
You had
to
a
go.
ball game, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did. But then we need to, so we're probably going to need to go to the hospital, and she took a shower and all, and then we got in the car, and then she just started having more labor pains pretty quickly.
Hurry up!
Better speed up.
Let's go. And then the doctor, Dr. Tessatori, was really a neat guy. I really liked him a lot. But he was over in Washington, and he didn't make it. He didn't get there, and so Devon was delivered by a doctor that was there on staff and was in the hospital. And so then the next time when Ginger was born, Dr. Tessatori came several hours ahead of time to make sure he was going to be there.
You didn't need to do that.
He was there about a half a day before she was born. But he said, I was sure I was going to make it this time. Mm-hmm. And they were both born in Arlington Hospital. I remember, though, that then there was the woman who was the head nurse on the maternity ward was not very sympathetic to letting me in to see Shirley and the babies. And of course, if you were a pastor, you could get in pretty easily. But just because, they didn't count that. They counted me being as a husband. And so I had to wait till just the right hours to get in to see them. But it was a good hospital. And that was, that was such a growing area, but it was really, it was not an easy time to be a pastor there because the 1954 decision on Brown versus the Board of Education, and the whole struggle, especially in Virginia with segregation, was really a big one. And
heating up.
They formed a different, what's called the Gray Plan, to keep segregation in the schools. And of course, our church was pretty open and pretty liberal. And I remember, preaching and working so much for the openness and the equality of everybody. one Sunday when I was preaching a sermon on equality and acceptance, and there were guys in the parking lot putting pamphlets on all the cars about the Great Commission report and that we need to keep segregation in the schools. And one of the guys was a member of the church, Charlie Miller.
That was probably about the time that Loving versus Virginia stuff was going on.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it would have been at that time because there was a lot of rigidity at that time. But a lot of people struggled with, they'd grown up with some real separation. And a lot of people worked on what was the right thing, though. And the church really grew and developed a lot of neat ideas about serving. And it was also a time when, during the war, and the draft was still going on at that time, and we had a number of people that were debating whether to register for the draft and whether to go into alternative service. So I guess it was alternative service at that time. And,
so what prompted you to go to Roanoke then? What was you ready to move on?
well, that's a really good question. One of the things I wanted to say about the Oakton Church, there was another church, little congregation that was connected with that. It was called Drainsville, which was in another community, and it was a small church that it was connected with that. And we'd been working to make that church independent while I was there, and we did. We had some people there that were summer pastorates, and they served that church, and the church was growing. And so we did get to work for the church to be a separate congregation, and there was some real possibilities because there was a really growing development called Reston, that was in the area. And actually Dale and Gladys had decided that they were going to come there and try to make that a really growing church. And then, of course, they came there, and then we decided to move to Roanoke shortly after that. So they felt that a little bit lonely.
You deserted them.
Well, then we deserted them, that's right. But anyway, of course, I had grown up in the Cloverdale Church, which is outside of Roanoke, and knew some people, or some people knew me from being in that area. And so when Central was open, there were some people that wanted to know whether we would be interested in going there. And I thought about it some and thought, well, maybe it would be an interesting experience, because it was very different from what the Oakton Church was, because it was a downtown city church that was struggling, and there was kind of a migration to the suburbs at that time, and yet there were a lot of issues in the city that the church could serve people that were being neglected, and a lot of the poor. And so I thought, well, that could be a real challenge, and some good things could happen. And so I went down and talked with them, and Lawrence Rice told me, he said, those people don't have any idea of what they want to do and what it's going to mean to be a church to serve the city. And if you can, if you go there, I mean, they don't know what they want. And so I said to him, I said, well, how can they really know if somebody isn't there to work with them and help them to see what the possibilities are? And so they invited me to come, and we decided that it would be a good thing to do. And so we went there. And they had been without a pastor for a while, for 6 months or 8 months, something like that. And that's why we went in January, because they really felt they needed to get a pastor and to get something stabilized. And so we went there, and a lot of things did happen there. Mm-hmm. We started a lot of club programs, some interracial programs, and a lot of neat things in the city that helped the church to grow, and became a pretty vibrant church for a number of years, and developed some programs that still exist, which was was a really neat thing about during that time.
And you're closer to grandmother then too.
That's right. Yeah, she was closer. That was close, and that was a good thing. But then when we decided to move from Roanoke to Indiana, that was not a very good
No.
grandmother. So we moved a long way off from her. But that I think I don't know I feel that each of the pastorates that I had, I really enjoyed what we had during those.
How long were you in Roanoke?
8 years and 8 months. I left came to Roanoke in the fall of came to Manchester in the fall of 1969. And I was interested in serving, I'd been interested in serving a college church sometime while I was still pastor. And it just happened that several college churches came open right at that same time. First one was Laverne, which I wasn't very interested in going to California. And then Manchester was the second one. And they invited me to come out and talk with them. See, I came just by myself the first time, didn't I? Then you all came with me. We came back.
We came to scope it out
Yeah, that was the second time.
in the spring
Yeah.
because it seemed desolate. Oh, hi.
Back
Because
natural.
spring,
Yeah.
spring hadn't, it wasn't really,
Wasn't pretty.
it didn't
Yeah.
show the town off in its
Yeah.
best light
Yeah.
because
But,
it wasn't really spring yet.
Some of you were sick. I wonder what was it?
August when we moved,
When we came out here
I had like a rash or something.
or something. What,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up in my diary to find out
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
what it was. But
We stayed in
I
that
thought we
house
moved in
down there.
August though. Maybe we didn't.
We stayed down there on the corner of corner of 9th Street, wasn't it?
That was a cool house.
Yeah, it was an interesting house. And David Hicks still lives. They lived there. They lived there for years.
Ninth and what's across the street?
9th and Wayne.
Wayne home.
Yeah. And we came out and talked with
The
them.
ninth and Wayne.
Yeah. Was it 9th or 7th? It was on 9th Street.
I remember living on 2nd Street.
Oh, that's when we lived. Yeah, that's where we rented that
Mhm.
place.
I
But
don't
we came
remember
out. We came out to visit.
Oh,
We stayed
oh.
in that gray house.
Oh, I didn't remember where that was.
Yeah, okay.
That didn't have
Yeah.
any.
David, what's his name, lives there.
David Hicks.
I didn't have any
David
memory
Hicks
of that.
lives there.
Really,
Yeah.
where that was.
Yeah, that's
Well,
where that
Second
was.
Street. I don't. Where's that?
104 West 2nd
104.
Street. It was across
104
from
West
Indian
2nd
Orchard.
Street. Yeah.
The Bushongs lived there. I don't remember.
Oh
his
yeah.
name
I
now.
know which house it is.
Yeah. That was called the Leffel House when we moved
No,
there.
the Leffel House.
But then the Bushongs have been there for years, for a lot of years. They still live there.
You're asking the wrong person. I haven't lived here for 10 years.
11.
I think they are.
Yeah.
That was a vacant lot across from there, where the bank is,
Okay. Anyway, yeah.
That's right. They built the bank probably
Yeah.
while we were there,
Mm-hmm.
and there
No
was.
kidding.
It seems like
Yeah.
we weren't thrilled about that at the time.
And Bob Hoover was president of the bank at that time, and then we ended up buying our house.
Because
from
they
him.
tore some houses down to do
Probably
the
would
bank,
have.
and there
Yeah,
was
they
a little
did.
bit
The
of
Howards lived across the street.
that's right,
Mhm. That's right, Cheryl.
and there was a little bit of backlash there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
that.
funny. I thought that
Mhm.
bank had been there longer than that.
So that would have been
60s.
69 that they were doing that, I think.
And that was an interesting time, of course, during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of college students came to church during that time. And I remember doing a good bit of counseling with a number of students that were debating what they were going to do about the draft. And a number of them were kids that were not brethren. And of course, I went to several draft boards to visit with them, to talk with them about it. And I remember several of those guys who were not brethren, the draft board would say, well, some of the members would say, well, you're not brethren, so how can you be concerned about not going to war?
I might still have a conscience.
That's right, yeah. I remember one of the roughest ones was a guy by the name of Lane Hood, who was a college student. And he was from Rochester. And I went over with him to the draft board. And most of the draft boards were made up of veterans.
Sure.
Yeah.
But he got his CO status. Did his 2 years, did his alternative service down at White's Institute.
Hmm.
But that was an interesting time during that time, and we had. You remember having Ted Glick here? You remember him?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I couldn't.
Well, he was one of the guys that they broke into a draft board office in Pennsylvania, and they poured blood on the records.
Oh, right.
Hmm.
And he had been in jail, and it was really kind of amazing. The church approved having him to come and speak. We tried to get that he could speak at the high school, but of course they didn't allow him to do that. But he did. He spoke at church, and that was we've just had some really wonderful speakers that came during that time. That were outstanding people in the country, like Robert McAfee Brown and Carlisle Marney. You don't remember him, everybody, but he was an outstanding pastor from Charlotte, North Carolina, who really did some great work to help Charlotte to make the transition to be more open to blacks. And he was pastor of a major Baptist church there. We developed that church's peacemaking conference, and every year, for a number of years, we had some outstanding leader in cooperation with the college at that time, and for a whole weekend.
Yeah, we saw some pictures of that in the History Museum.
Yeah.
The display.
Of some of the famous speakers.
Yeah.
Oh, in a different section I saw where one of the Strausses was meeting with Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I think
You saw some pictures of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
That was the year right before we came, 1968. And I don't know. A lot of people thought Blair was a pretty rigid person, and he was in a lot of ways. He ruled with pretty much an iron hand in a lot of ways. But that was one time I remember he told Bob Stauffer, who was chairman of the board at that time. Bob Stauffer said, we should not have him come here. And Blair told him, well, if we don't have him come, you'll have my resignation. And he came. I mean, I don't know exactly how it went, but that was the gist of the story.
Laid down the law.
Yeah. Well, is that enough?
That's a good chunk for this.
It's a good chunk.
Yeah.
I think there are a few details of things on some of those earlier years that I'm going to jot down.
Do, and then we'll do another little session.
Yeah.
Just was some personal things that I think, but
that's a good overview, and with some kind of a focus on the younger years that maybe we don't know that much about.
yeah.
See, we can do this session at the other end of the week after we get back.
Yeah, we can
Very
do
good.
that one too. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
I think it's
it
great.
really helps me
Great
to
family
do it.
history, and you too.
For us to even talk together, it helps me to think about some things that I wouldn't think about
Come up
just
with
on
things
my
that
own.
you probably haven't thought about for years or decades.
Yeah.
You too.
But I, like a couple of things in Roanoke. I was president of Roanoke Ministers Conference, but I developed, this really close relationship with Noel Taylor, the African American pastor there, and then Charlie Fox, who was, a Presbyterian guy, but just a wonderful, wonderful person that I just really I admired him so much. We worked together on some of those city things, like the People, Religion, and Change conference. And you remember that picture that came out in the paper that we had arranged to have this guy, this famous speaker from Washington, Sam Proctor, to come and speak, who was an African American.
I don't remember.
And then they had in the Roanoke Times, when they had the headline about him being there, They had my name under his picture.
I do remember that now. That was funny. That might be one of your scrapbooks.
It is, yeah, I think it is
it's
a
in your
scrapbook that you all put together. And then the another thing that I was a fun thing was when I testified at city council about the Go-Go Girls.
Yep,
and
that's in the
Papa
that was in the
Joe's.
paper too.
That's in the
Go-Go
paper, Papa Joe's. So
Mhm.
just funny
It's
things.
good to reflect.
Yeah. Oh, and then
Reflect on
another
those.
thing really you want to need to say something about was getting to speak at Natural Bridge
Mhm.
at the Easter sunrise service, and that was a statewide broadcast,
That was a very cool thing.
and you girls enjoyed
Mhm.
jumping on the beds.
Mhm. We like jumping on the beds. It was cold there.
It was
It was
cold.
a cold
But
Easter.
where we went to the first year we went there, I read the scripture and had prayer, I think something like
Mhm.
that. Then the second year I preached.
Yeah.
And they had the choir from VMI. So they had a good choir at that time when they spoke. I mean, they sang.
It's all good
Stayed in the
stuff.
Natural Bridge Hotel.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. Some of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's good.
Yeah.
Should we wrap
Yeah.
it up for now, Brian?
Sure.
Is that okay, Brian?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. We're good. What?
Drill.
Sure.